Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, comrades, and welcome to the program. In case you haven't noticed, something unusual has occurred in the stock market, or not that unusual after all. You see, Reddit found out that a bunch of very, very rich people were essentially betting on the GameStop stock to go down, which forces them to buy the stock on a later date. If the stock goes down, in the meantime, they make money. If it goes up, they lose money. Because Reddit figured this out, they essentially boosted the price by buying this stock en masse and boosted it up to more than $300, I believe even tipped to $400. That's a lot for GameStop stocks. What does that mean? Well, that means that all these big hedge fund companies that are invested in this have to buy these stocks from these Wall Street Bets people. And the problem is, these Wall Street Bet people are not selling the stock until it's very, very expensive. Essentially just kind of forcing the hand of Wall Street in order to buy these stocks at ludicrous prices. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole nitty-gritty about the stock market because, for one, I'm very underqualified to talk about this, and for two, there are many people who can talk about this much better than I can, so I'm not going to do that. I'm instead going to talk about this from a socialist perspective. What does this mean for socialism? Well, for one, it boosts class consciousness. You see, in the wake of this happening, what these hedge fund companies did was essentially block normal people, normal everyday people, from trading these stocks. What that means is that people saw the light. All throughout the pandemic, the idea that the rich aren't your friends have become more and more abundantly clear. The idea that we're all in this together doesn't really go up when one portion of those people can fuck off to a yacht somewhere. The same with climate change. You're not really in this together when one part of the population can just live on a solar-powered yacht for the rest of their lives, even if the entire world is underwater. What this shows is that these billionaires will always put money above the interests of everyday working people. They will even plausibly commit crimes in order to back up their monetary interests. Now, this is nothing new. Of course it's not. The idea that Wall Street fucks over everyday people isn't exactly a new concept. But right now is a great opportunity to tell people that it's happening. To show people that these wealthy people are not your friends. Their interests will always go above yours. They don't care that with that money you earn from that stock, you could pay off your college debt, or pay your rent, or gift to your family that really needs it. Because they want it. The thing is, if they lose all the money, are they going to drink any less champagne? Will they have to move out of their Manhattan mansion? Probably not. They probably won't have a problem with it because they'll get bailed out anyway. It's class warfare, just like it's always been. The entire history is littered with class conflict, and this is just another example of it. An example in which people figured out that when they work together, when they band together and have the strength of numbers, they can outsmart these people. They have more power collectively than these hedge fund companies have on their own, and that is a great feeling. It makes them feel powerful. Of course it does. Outsmarting these billion-dollar companies, of course that feels good, especially if you make a bunch of money on the top of it. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that this will be a turning point in leftist ideology, and all of a sudden all these Wall Street Bet types will join the left and join the cause of socialism. I mean, I've seen very mixed opinions on them from the left. Some people are saying that it's an amazing thing because they're cheating billionaires out of a bunch of money, which I agree with. And other people saying, well, yeah, that's true, they are cheating billionaires out of a lot of money, but are they really working class people? So let's talk about that, shall we? What class do they belong to? Well, if you take the binary class system that Marx put forth, that wherein you have two groups, the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, in which group would they fall then? Well, if we take the definition to be that the proletariat earns money by working, by labor, and the bourgeoisie earns money by owning things, then they would be bourgeois. Yes, they do things. Of course they do. Market research, whatever. But that labor, that work, doesn't contribute to the value of the product or the value of the company. That is purely something they do for themselves. It's like cleaning your room. Yes, it's work, but it doesn't really add value to anyone but yourself. Not to say that you shouldn't do it. Clean your room. So are they bourgeois? Well, but they do have different class interests than the billionaire hedge fund companies. We saw that this time around. They have very clear different interests. Although on some parts they do align. They have the shared interests with these people that the stock market does well. That's a shared interest, whereas a working class person doesn't really have that interest, as long as their company can afford to keep them. So are they bourgeois? Well, it kind of shows the limits of a binary class system. I would probably argue that they are more bourgeois light. Like they have a lot of the shared interests, but also different ones. So that makes the question, are they our allies, quite difficult. I would say that right now our interests are more aligned, and with our I mean the interests of socialists, more aligned with these Wall Street bets types than with hedge fund managers. I don't think that's a very controversial thing to say. Because although these people make money off of, what we would consider to be unethical means, I think there's a lot more to it than just that. And if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say unethical means, allow me to introduce you to a concept called surplus labor value. What's that? Surplus labor value is the theory in Marxian economics. Let's say that you are a baker. You work at a bakery and you bake bread. The dough that you bake the bread with is $1 per bread, and you sell the bread for $5. That means that your labor value, the value of the labor that you put in to turn that ball of dough into a bread, is $4. But if your boss only pays you $1 for making that bread, the surplus of the labor value that you put in is $3. That money goes to the big man upstairs. That's profit. And profit is what's being paid out in dividend when you buy stocks. Now, not all stocks pay you dividend, but let's, for the sake of argument, say they do. If you own a stock, if you own a share of the company, you're being paid dividend. You're being paid part of the profit. If you own 1%, you get 1% of the profit of that company. You didn't work for that profit. It wasn't your labor that turned the bread or that turned the dough into the bread. You didn't provide any labor that really added value to the company or to the product for the end consumer. So that is what people talk about when they say surplus labor value. You are profiting by owning something, by owning capital in order to buy a share that you didn't work for. You might have heard the expression, for any man who gets $1 they didn't work for, someone has to work for $1 they didn't get. That's the concept. It's really as simple as that. So what do I think of stocks? That being said, on one hand, you can fuck over hedge fund billionaires, which is fun, of course. It's hilarious. On the other hand, they are unethical. My personal opinion of them is that currently, the question isn't, do someone profit off of surplus labor value or no one? If you choose, as an individual, not to buy stocks, that doesn't mean that money is going back to the workers. That money It's just going to someone else who buys the stocks. And if no persons, no individuals like you and me buy stocks, that just means it's going to go to Wall Street. So in that point, the question is, would we rather the money go to Wall Street or to Wall Street bets? And my personal opinion is that it's much better for average day people to have enough money to pay off their college and to buy a car and to pay rent than it is for these Wall Street billionaires to have another few $billion. So at this point, I would say that buying and selling stocks, doing this kind of trading stuff, falls in the same category as there is no ethical consumption of capitalism. Yes, you are contributing to the mechanisms of capitalism, but you're doing that as well when you buy an iPhone, when you buy a MacBook, when you buy an IKEA table. You are also enabling the mechanisms of capitalism, just in a slightly different way, but you're still doing it. So in that sense, I think at this point, it's very, very based to trade stocks, especially if you fuck over hedge fund billionaires. But what it truly means is that right now and in the future, it's our job as leftists to turn people to the left. Use this as a very valuable example of why our class interests are utterly divided, and how the interests of even people who make quite a lot of money on Wall Street bets are completely different to the interests of the billionaires. Their interests are to keep you poor, and our interest is to stop them from doing that. Workers of the world, unite.